Get out of my way.
Oh
Excuse
no.
me, guys.
Oh no, look at that. Don't tell me this is a half-coon baby.
Oh!
The episode opens inside a high-tech warehouse where two thieves, Job and Carrie, make a daring escape after a heist. As they flee the scene, their getaway is abruptly halted by Sheriff Lucas Hood. Shocked to discover that one of the culprits is his ex-girlfriend, Carrie, Hood hesitates and allows them to go free, just moments before his colleague, Detective Brock, arrives at the scene. That night, Hood meets Carrie at a local bar and sternly scolds her for taking part in the heist. Carrie calmly explains that she needed the money to support her daughter, Max, and reminds him that she doesn't need his permission to make her own choices. She then walks away, leaving Hood conflicted. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to tech boss Kai Proctor, who is being briefed by his right-hand man, Clay, about the massive losses caused by the explosion at the tech warehouse. Clay reports that the destruction was triggered by a cell phone detonator. As the discussion grows tense, Proctor's wife, Rebecca, enters and joins the conversation. Proctor, growing increasingly suspicious, becomes convinced that the robbery at his tech warehouse was orchestrated by Sheriff Hood himself. At a quiet diner, Detective Emmett Yoners enjoys a meal with his pregnant wife, Meg. Their peaceful evening takes a turn when a local gangster named Max spots Emmett and discreetly alerts his crew. Meanwhile, Sheriff Lucas Hood, accompanied by Deputy Siobhan, meets with his confidential informant. She nervously reveals that she saw Kai Proctor and his men moving crates into a basement. Fearful for her safety, she pleads with Hood to take action soon, questioning why he's taking so long to arrest Proctor when her life is already at risk. On her way home, Meg is confronted by Sharp and his gang, who taunt her for falling in love with a police officer. When Sharp mocks her further, Meg defiantly slaps him across the face. In a fit of rage, Sharp punches her hard, sending her to the ground, while Max viciously kicks her in the stomach before they flee the scene. Moments later, Meg is rushed to the hospital. Her devastated husband, Detective Emmett Yoners, arrives and demands to know what happened. With tears in her eyes, Meg reveals that she was attacked by his enemies, the gangsters he's been investigating. The attending doctor grimly informs Emmett that Meg is bleeding internally and requires immediate surgery to save both her and the baby. Overcome with rage and grief, Emmett demands vengeance against those who attacked his wife. Deputy Siobhan and Sheriff Brock intervene, urging him to stay at the hospital with Meg and promising to bring the culprits to justice. Soon after, the doctor delivers devastating news. Meg suffered severe internal bleeding, and the trauma caused her to lose the baby. Later, Sheriff Hood visits Emmett at the hospital, assuring him that the criminals will not escape justice. When Meg regains consciousness, Emmett gently tells her that the doctors expect her to recover, though she remains heartbroken over the loss of their child. Shattered by the tragedy that struck his wife, a grief-stricken and enraged Emmett returns to the police station. Pretending he's been assigned to relieve Sherry for the night shift, he gains access to the holding cells where the gangsters responsible for attacking Meg are being held. Haunted by the thought that justice may never be served for the death of his unborn son, Emmett takes matters into his own hands. He unlocks the cell of one of the culprits and offers him a deadly deal. If the man can defeat him, he'll walk free. A brutal and violent fight erupts within the confines of the cell, fueled by Emmett's rage and grief. Inside the cell, one of the gangsters manages to grab Emmett in a chokehold from behind. But Emmett, consumed by fury, slams him hard against the wall and fights back with the ferocity of a wounded lion. He overpowers the man, knocking him to the floor and finishing him with a crushing final kick. Without hesitation, Emmett turns to Sharp, his wife's attacker. Fixing him with a cold, murderous stare, he unlocks the cell and gives him the same grim offer. If he can get past him, he'll earn his freedom. A savage brawl erupts, fiercer than anything the station has ever seen. They exchange brutal punches and elbows in a blur of rage and vengeance until Emmett delivers a devastating blow that leaves Sharp gasping for air, his strength fading. Driven by grief and righteous fury, Emmett unleashes a relentless barrage of strikes, pounding Sharp with merciless force.
The next morning, Sheriff Hood is seen leaving Rebecca's place after spending the night with her. Later, at Sugar Bates Bar, the bartender casually warns Hood not to buy meat from the same place he gets his bread and butter, a subtle caution about mixing business with pleasure. Their conversation is abruptly interrupted when Kai Proctor storms in, confronting Hood for meddling in his affairs. Unfazed, Hood firmly reminds him that he's a lawman, and it's his duty to investigate wrongdoing. After Proctor leaves, Sugar quietly admits to Hood that being his friend always seems to come at a price, hinting at the danger that follows the sheriff wherever he goes. That night, Sheriff Hood sneaks into Proctor's basement, where he uncovers a stash of hidden illegal firearms. On his way out, Rebecca spots him but chooses to remain silent, letting him continue undetected. Upon discovering the weapons, Hood immediately secures a search warrant and orders the arrest of Proctor. Soon after, Proctor's henchmen are apprehended and jailed, their arrogance no match for the law. Enraged by what they did to Meg, Hood and his team execute the search warrant at Proctor's residence, ultimately arresting him for possession of illegal arms. Justice is finally set in motion, though the tension in the town remains palpable. Hood and Deputy Kelly arrive at the station to find both criminals lying incapacitated on the floor. They immediately call for an ambulance. Hood reprimands Emmett, criticizing him for taking the law into his own hands, arguing that his actions were outside the bounds of his official duties. Emmett responds passionately, explaining that he could not stand by while his wife endured unimaginable pain and the heartbreak of losing their baby. The episode concludes with a somber note as Emmett resigns from his position, handing in his police badge, leaving viewers with the weight of grief, justice, and moral conflict lingering in the air. Thanks for watching.